President Cyril Ramaphosa will announce the changes to his cabinet tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. This was the word from presidency spokesperson Vincent Magwenya at a media briefing at the Union Buildings earlier today. There's been intense speculation about the makeup of the cabinet, with critics raising concerns over the delay in making the changes in cabinet, especially in the wake of the resignation of David Mabuza as a member of parliament last week. For more on this, let's get the latest then from our reporter Kenny Mapanga, who's at the Union Buildings for us this afternoon. Kenny, a very good afternoon to you. Right, we understand there was indeed a press briefing, a short press briefing, as you did mention. Talk to us about what was spoken about in that particular press briefing. We're hearing, of course, that the president will address the issue of the cabinet reshuffle, and it is confirmation at this stage, we understand, at 7 p.m. Tomorrow.
Indeed. Good afternoon to you, Flo, and the viewers at home. Following nationwide speculation, we finally have a date of Monday, 7 p.m., where we can expect that the president will announce some cabinet changes. We have this development from Union Buildings, where the president's spokesperson, Mr. Vincent Magwenya, just held a briefing to engage with the media, on topical matters. For the purposes of time, Flo, I'll get back to your question, but I do want to bring Mr. Magwenya in so we can discuss a few more issues affecting the president and this nationwide speculation that we've seen over the weekend. Of course, there have been talks that the delay with the cabinet reshuffle is that essentially the president might have a poor pool of people to choose from. That may have been the delay that has subjected South Africans to this confusion. Could you take us into confidence regarding the procedural steps that were taken to arrive us to this date that you've announced here at Union Buildings?
So, Kenny, we've been consistent in saying this is a prerogative exercise, which the president is empowered to exercise in terms of the Constitution. That's number one. Number two, there was never any set date or deadline that was given to the president. The speculation that you refer to, we cannot take responsibility for, except we've always said at the right time, when the president is ready, we will alert the media on time as to when that announcement will be made. And we fulfilled that undertaking on our part. There were other processes that were taking place, like the consultations that the president had to undertake. There were parliamentary processes of new members that were being sworn into parliament. The president also had to take account of those processes in his reconfiguration of the executive.
Considering the optics over the weekend of the president attending that cattle auction or showing an appearance there at the cattle auction, you did say he didn't attend the actual event the next day, but the optics and the perception that came out after that and the confusion, it appeared, in the presidential communications team, you were on full view stating that it was an exaggeration. There was a tweet that came out from a member of your comms team creating a different perception, prompting people to ask, what is the confusion here in the presidency and the issue of optics and perception? What is your response to that?
No, there was no confusion in the presidency. All official statements on behalf of the president and concerning the president are issued by myself as the spokesperson. So individuals who take to social media platforms to express their own views cannot be translated to be speaking on behalf of the presidency. That's number one. Number two, there was no confusion. We did confirm that the president had a common cold. However, that common cold did not prevent him from fulfilling his duties. He continued with his duties since Tuesday, when his discomfort was quite visible during the hosting of the president of Uganda, President Museveni. And so he continued to work. With respect to the appearance on Friday at the Ndabanyoni Cattle Stud event, that event had been scheduled for some time back. The president just made a brief appearance to greet guests, and he went on to do his work and rest a little bit. He didn't attend the auction because the cold was still persistent. And so I think the confusion you're referring to was largely driven by misinformation, a false expectation that the president was going to announce the new executive on Thursday. We hadn't announced that, hence I'm referring to it as a false expectation. Secondly, rumors that were being peddled on social media and elsewhere, which we cannot be held responsible for. Our communication is always timely as and when the president is ready to announce certain actions, and we take full responsibility of that communication. We're visible, we're on the record, and so that's what we can be held responsible for, but not unnamed sources and others who drive speculation for whatever reason.
Now, the president has always had his farm, and not to say that he can't have his personal time on that farm, but out of curiosity, is the president ever cognizant of the optics and the perceptions regarding how people may perceive certain things and the climate in which certain actions are made? When you're speaking of this event that took place on Friday, I mean, you could have preempted that questions would have rose when those pictures were spread all over social media.
The mere fact that the president posed for pictures with individuals who attended the event shows that there was nothing to hide on his part. That's number one. Number two, we've confirmed and re-emphasized time and again that the president remains seized with his daily tasks and with challenges that are facing the country. And so attending now and then to events that take place at his farm does not in any way take away his attention from his work and the main responsibilities that he has to fulfill. It's a narrative that others are driving for whatever reason, but insofar as the president's commitment, dedication to his work, that is never undermined by him attending to one or two events in a quarter or in a year that take place at his farm.
Okay, let's move to the SABC board. We now know you got a list of 15 names. The president has to approve 12. We've mostly heard from the presidency that it's regrettable, the delay, but take us into confidence. What exactly are you seeking clarity on?
So, Kenny, as you know, now the matter is in court. So I'm a little bit restrained in terms of what I can say pending that court process. Safe to say there were several issues that the president sought clarification on that were, one, inconsistent with the act itself. There were issues of logistics, for example. We got, or the presidency rather received, the list of candidates that were shortlisted on the 20th of December. The resumes of those individuals were only received on the 13th of January or so, somewhere there. And so there were delays even before we could, or the president rather, could engage the process thoroughly. On engaging the process, there were these red flags which had to be attended to. Some amongst those concerns include objections on the process. The president needed to be satisfied that the process was conducted properly. There were objections around individuals that were said to be conflicted. The president needed to be satisfied that those objections were attended to properly before he can sign off on the appointment. And then there was this issue of additional names, which does not find itself or does not find expression in the Act. And so the president needed clarification on those matters. You will know once the president has signed an appointment or has signed a bill, any litigation that follows thereafter is targeted towards the president. So he does, in terms of the Constitution, has the obligation and duty to satisfy himself that what he signs off will meet any form of scrutiny thereafter.
And I'm sure you're well aware of the public mandate that the SABC performs, and it's critical for the public broadcaster to have a board. Is the delay at Parliament? Have you received correspondence on these clarity-seeking issues that you have sent out? And it's been a couple of weeks that we've been given of seeking issues. What has the correspondence been from Parliament?
There is an exchange of correspondence between the presidency and Parliament on these matters. It remains our sincerest hope that we'll be able to conclude these matters or have some form of conclusion on these issues as soon as possible. The President fully understands and appreciates the critical role of the SABC in support of our constitutional democracy. It is deeply regrettable that we find ourselves at this point in time where the SABC still does not have a board. It's even more regrettable that interested parties, out of their own frustration, have resorted to take the matter to court.
Speaking on court cases, there are quite a number of cases where we've seen the president being hauled to court to take a decision. What is the president's thoughts on the criticisms around his indecision in making decisions, rather, that will benefit the country?
A number of cases where the president is being hauled to court, forced to take decisions. Just give me one.
Well, let's talk about the load shedding case that's heading to court now.
Yeah, that case has got nothing to do with indecision on the side of the president.
Well, sorry to interrupt you there. It would have to do with the president's failure to act in terms of load shedding and protecting those human rights and those constitutional values for certain sectors of society.
Well, look, we have a constitutional framework and a legal framework that allows individuals to take their grievance to court. If you cite that particular case, I think you're referring to the UDM and others versus the president and government and other parties in government, there are a number of issues with that case which will be ventilated in court. But broadly, it is grossly incorrect and inaccurate to say the president has failed to deal with load shedding when he has presented what has been commended by even independent energy experts in the form of the Energy Action Plan. When government is working on that Energy Action Plan and some progress has been reported in that regard, we have communicated a number of times that the severity of load shedding has a lot to do with the state of ESCOM plans. There is a plan to even fix those plans in terms of skills, budget allocations, accelerating procurement processes so that ESCOM is enabled to fulfill that maintenance schedule. So there's work being done there. We have issues of sabotage, criminality, corruption in and around ESCOM. We have a dedicated multidisciplinary task team that's dealing with those issues. Arrests have been reported. Cases are on a court roll. This team meets once a week to process all these investigations that are taking place at ESCOM. I think anybody who says the president has failed in this regard is going to struggle to prove that when we have a body of evidence that shows the kind of work that has been done under the direction of President Ramaphosa. So that is on that case.
Has the president sought to seek clarity on Doreta's claims about a minister and his cabinet regarding the alleged corruption at ESCOM? Again,
that's another issue that has unfortunately been misconstrued and misinterpreted. Mm-hmm. To the extent that there is knowledge of corruption and criminality at ESCOM that the president knows, that was also presented to the president during his visit at Tutuga Power Station, where the power station manager took the president through the various acts of sabotage and criminality alongside steps that are being taken inside ESCOM to deal with that criminality. Some of the concentration that you see now coming from the security cluster in dealing with ESCOM has been accelerated as a result of those conversations that the president has had with not only Andre and the minister, but also power station managers. On that day, the president left Tutuga and went to Megawatt Park and had an interaction with different power station managers. In fact, if not all of them were present at that interaction. So the president is fully aware of the levels of criminality taking place at ESCOM, hence the kind of response that you have. Insofar as names of individuals, the simple thing to do there, if you have a name of an individual that is involved in criminal conduct, that is involved in corruption, take that name to the police station, open a case against that individual, provide that information there. The president has not been furnished with any names of either syndicate leaders or ministers or any individual that is involved with corruption at Eskom. That has not been provided to the president. It has not even been provided to his national security advisor, Dr. Mufumadi, who was requested by Andre and the Eskom's private security team to facilitate a more collaborative effort between that private security outfit with law enforcement agencies. That facilitation was done, but Dr. Mufumadi was never provided with names. He was briefed on the scope of the investigations, facilitated a close collaborative relationship between law enforcement agencies and Eskom's private security outfit, the result of which now are these developments that we're seeing, where we're beginning to have a crack at these syndicates, where we're beginning to peel through this level of criminality at Eskom. So that is the broad understanding that the president has, but more importantly, the kind of actions that he has directed be undertaken by his administration. So far as names, no. Whoever has a name, whether it's Andre or whoever, they can take that to the relevant law enforcement agencies where those issues will be properly investigated.
Well, considering the fact that he's going to make changes to his executive, if there are allegations of a cabinet minister being involved in such corruption, wouldn't the president seek clarity on that issue?
Changes to the executive are not a fixed event. They can take place at any time if the situation so necessitates and requires. So the president can implement or execute changes to his national executive as and when he requires to do so. Right now, he has not been provided by anybody with any evidence that points to any member of his executive that will require him to factor that in his decision-making process.
And lastly, the Minister of Electricity post, it was painted as an emergency during the State of the Nation address. To date, we'll probably find out tomorrow, if I'm correct, who that is. If it was an emergency, why sit on that specific appointment for so long?
I think what's important to appreciate are processes that ensued after the President announced that position. One, and that process is still underway to define the powers of that minister. Secondly, what was more important was finalizing and publishing the state of disaster regulations, which will then guide some of the aspects, not only of this minister, but other concerned government departments that have to contribute a solution to not only the alleviation of load shedding, but also to getting us to a point where we are working towards a stable, sustainable energy future as a country.
All right, thank you very much. That was spokesperson to the president, Vincent Magwenya, just taking us into confidence regarding a number of topical issues that were discussed during this briefing. I'm going to toss it over to you in studio, Flo.
All right, Kenny Mapanga, many thanks to you. That is the presidential spokesperson, Vincent Magwenya, speaking to Kenny Mapanga on the back of quite a number of issues there, but in particular the issue of the cabinet reshuffle, which we understand will happen tomorrow at 7 p.m. No doubt we'll have that live for you here on SABC News.